Yo, what's good, everybody? We're back again with another episode of the Mal with the Mic podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about the current state of the New York Mets. But before we get started, don't forget, if you can't watch on here, we are now on Spotify, so go tune in on there. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, whatever it is. Show the support that you can, and let's get started. So like I said, today we're going to be discussing the current state of the New York Mets. Obviously, the Mets have had an entertaining offseason in the least. We've already seen them dish out that record-shattering deal for Juan Soto. This is the first time you guys see me speak of it, so I'll give you my reaction. If only you saw my raw reaction. I mean, it was 10:30 at night. Sunday Night Football was on. Was just chilling there. And there was a report that came out around 8:30 that's saying Juan Soto could be, nearing a decision by tonight. And I'm sitting there just waiting, refreshing. And then my uncle, who's a Yankees fan, texts me. He says, "Congratulations." And I'm like, what is this guy talking about? And then it kind of hits me. So I search up Juan Soto. Juan Soto, 15 years, $765 million mega deal from the New York Mets. He is an absolute franchise-changing player, a generational player, and he really is just going to completely change the trajectory of this team for the next 15 years. The ability to be able to pair him with Francisco Lindor, that 1-2 in the lineup, is just going to be absolutely filthy, and there's just so much going on. There's so much that he adds, and this New York team grew so much by adding him to a team that already is good and already was able to make it to Game 6 of the NLCS. So adding Juan Soto is just completely unbelievable. Mets have made also a couple other nice moves so far. They've brought in a bunch of starting pitching depth with Frankie Montas, Clay Holmes. I believe it was Canning from the Angels. So definitely some starting pitching depth. We did see last year them deal with some starting pitching injuries. They already lost Luis Severino. Don't fret, because Sean Manaea is returning on the 3-year, $75 million contract. Does have a little bit of deferred money, so appreciate Sean for taking one for the team and taking that money later down the line. But great to have Sean Manaea back. He's a player who wants to be with New York. He was absolutely excellent last year, the southpaw. And really, he's just a great player to have in the clubhouse. He's a veteran. He's a leader. And you just love to have guys like that in your clubhouse. And he's also, a great pitcher. So with everything that the Mets have done so far, I do think they are a better team. Only real difference we've seen is Luis Severino out, but we've brought in starting pitching depth. We brought in Juan Soto, but there still is a couple of question marks about this team. First thing, we got to talk about first base. So up until about a couple of days ago, it was looking like Pete Alonso could be on his way out. He had interest from the Yankees, and the first base market was moving pretty slow. But then within 48 hours, Christian Walker went to the Astros. Yankees got Paul Goldschmidt. I believe Carlos Santana went back to the Cleveland Guardians. Nathaniel Lowe got traded to the Washington Nationals from the Texas Rangers. So a bunch of just different first base decisions being made, and now the Mets really seem as if they are the only suitor left for Pete Alonso. Alonso turned down a 7-year, I believe it was $158 million deal for the Mets early last season, and he bet on himself, and he did have a down year, so betting on himself wasn't the best choice. So now he's probably going to end up with a smaller dollar amount, a smaller amount of years, entering his age 30 season. So there's a couple different ways this could go. I've seen that the Mets are interested in bringing him back. And I wouldn't see why Alonso wouldn't be interested in returning to the Mets, a team that he's been with his entire career. He's had an unbelievable amount of success throughout his 7-year career. So I think the most likely scenario here is Alonso returning to New York. What type of deal that is, I don't quite know. I think the years are going to be a little shorter towards 4 or 5, and I don't see him making more than 25-30 million a year. So if I had to guess, I would say around the 4-year 100, maybe 5-year 125. I think that's around the ballpark around what Alonso will get. If Alonso isn't to return, we've seen them have serious, apparently, interest in Alex Bregman, third baseman from the Houston Astros. He's probably going to get a much larger figure, somewhere close to around 200 for 7 years. So, don't really know what the Mets will do there. I've also seen a scenario in where they get Alonso and Bregman, which, I mean, would just be absolutely insane. That would probably move Mark Vientos to DH, so don't know how that would work. I mean, we've seen Vientos at third the last year. He's been pretty decent, and I think having him at third will just help overall for his development into an absolute star, even though we already know he's an amazing player. But in my personal opinion, I think the best route to go, forget Alex Bregman, leave Vientos at third, bring in Pete Alonso. Another thing the Mets need to take care of, we need one more starting pitcher, and that may seem irrational considering we've signed 3, but we need a guy who can handle a spot at the top of this staff. Obviously, you have Minaya and obviously have Senga, 2 great guys who are absolutely amazing pitchers. Senga obviously spent a lot of last year on the IL, but he should be back and healthy this year. But I would really like to see them go get a guy like Roki Sasaki. Sasaki, not a normal free agent. He has the, I believe it's the international pool contract. So for his free agency will be a little bit more different. I doubt he signs anywhere until January, but I think he should have some interest in the Mets. Obviously, they got Kodai Senga, who's used to playing in Japan and went through the transition of coming to the MLB. So I think Sasaki should have some interest. Definitely could go to the Dodgers. Definitely could go to the Padres. We've seen the Yankees and the Cubs with some interest, so it's definitely going to be there's definitely going to be some competition, but I think the Mets should do a lot to be able to get Sasaki. He would really round out the staff. You'd have Minaya, Senga, Sasaki, David Peterson, who was absolutely phenomenal last year, and then a bunch of those guys who just fill out the end of the rotation, Frankie Montas, Clay Holmes, who's transitioning into a starter. You got Tyler McGill, Paul Blackburn, Canning from the Angels. So a bunch of different guys who can fill out the end of that rotation. David Stearns has said that he wants to do a 6-man rotation with New York this year. So it will be interesting to see a lot of these guys get some rest. So New York is looking to have around 10 starting pitchers on their roster by opening day, which is interesting considering they need some bullpen pieces as well. And it'll be interesting to see how they can finagle around that. Maybe could see a couple guys become long man pieces out of the bullpen like Tyler McGill was last year, and that was the vision they had for Adrian Hauser, even though he didn't do well in that role. But definitely could see them taking one of those back end of the rotation starters, moving him to the bullpen. If that's the last thing I had to say the Mets need, it's some bullpen pieces. Obviously, you have Edwin Diaz. Obviously, Jose Butto has been a great long man out of the rotation, out of the bullpen. But we need a couple more guys to be able to set up Diaz. Diaz was struggled a lot last year in tight knit scenarios, and a lot of those times it got to a tight knit scenario because of the guy before him. So we need somebody to be able to set up Diaz, give him an opportunity to pitch in a not too high pressure situation, just to be able to get him his confidence back. I feel like ever since that injury in the WBC, he really hasn't had the same confidence as he did back in 2022. So I definitely would like to see Mets get a couple bullpen pieces to complement Edwin Diaz. But for the most part, the Mets have had a phenomenal offseason so far. A couple things that would make this a A-plus offseason. Obviously, re-signing Pete Alonso, getting one more top of the rotation starting caliber pitcher, and adding a little bit to the bullpen. We've seen a couple of trade rumors flying around with Starling Marte and Brett Beatty, so we'll see how that plays out. New York obviously looking for a DH. In my personal opinion, I think you got to go back to Jesse Winker. He was absolutely crucial in that playoff run, especially in the Philly and Dodgers series, even in the Milwaukee series. So I think you bring back a guy who you know is good, who you know was great in the clubhouse. Bring back Jesse Winker. He can be the left-handed DH. And honestly, with Starling Marte, I think they should keep him. I think Brett Baty gets traded, but I think Starling Marte should stay. Considering his age growing, he can move to DH and be the right-handed DH. With a little platoon at that DH spot with Winker and Marte. Obviously, the outfield will look to be Soto, Brandon Nimmo, obviously. And then center field could really be between Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri. Remember, the Mets acquired Jose Siri from the Tampa Bay Rays earlier in the offseason. So definitely could see how the outfield situation plays out. Mets obviously got the corners figured out unless Brandon Nimmo moves back to center field. But they got two guys figured out, Soto and Nimmo. So I guess we'll see who's that third outfielder, and that'll obviously play into who's going to DH this year. But Mets looking good, looking ready for the season, and I'm absolutely ecstatic to watch this team this year. Well, everybody, thank you guys for tuning in to Matt with the Mic. Appreciate you guys all for watching. Again, don't forget, we are on Spotify now, so if you can't watch here on YouTube, go tune in on Spotify. Same username, Mal with the Mic. Please drop a comment, follow, subscribe, whatever it is. Any way you can show support, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.